The top business stories live from the Sky Newsroom. A fundamental reset. BP announces plans to scale back its renewable projects and ramp up oil and gas production. Ukraine to sign a minerals deal with Donald Trump. We'll ask what it expects in return. And a shake-up at Heathrow, which could see some airlines being forced to relocate the long-standing bases. Very good afternoon. Welcome to Business Live on this Wednesday with me, Darren McCaffrey. Just to let you know, we're also expecting potentially to have access to President Trump's first cabinet meeting since he became president. We may well have that for you in the next 30 minutes. Obviously, we'll bring you that live when we do get it. But let's start with a big story today, and that is BP announcing plans to fundamentally reset its strategy, with the company scaling back its renewable projects and increasing oil and gas production. Under the plans, it will increase oil and gas investment to $10 billion per year. Meanwhile, it will reduce its investment in renewable technology, such as biofuels and EV charging, to $1.5 to $2 billion a year. That is down by more than $5 billion under the previous guidance.
In 2020, we made some bold strategic changes, accelerating into the energy transition while progressively reducing our hydrocarbon business. We then saw COVID, the war in Ukraine, a recession, and a shift in attitudes of markets and governments have a fundamental impact on the energy system. Pressure on budgets meant that lower-cost energy won out in most nations, and the pace of transition and decarbonization, while important, was not as fast as envisioned. And energy demand continues to rise. Our optimism for a fast transition was misplaced, and we went too far, too fast.
Well, are investors convinced by that? It doesn't seem immediately that they are, with the share price, as you can see, down 1.5% this afternoon. And one of the big criticisms of BP is that it's not been able to return the dividends that actually other oil companies have been over the last 5 years. Let's bring in Nick Butler. He's former Group Vice President for Strategy and Policy at BP. Very good afternoon to you, Nick. It used to be BP beyond petroleum. Now it's back to petroleum. Quite the about turn today.
Yes, Darren, it is. Good afternoon. It is an about turn, and I think, as you said, the market is not very impressed by it. I think they were expecting some acknowledgement of the poor returns that BP's delivered over the last 5 years. I think they were expecting changes at board level. And I was hoping personally, at least, and I know others share this view, that they would take this opportunity to do something really creative with the renewable side of the business. They have some good things which I fear are now going to be neglected. And I thought they should take it out, spin it off, find other owners to work with them on that business and run them quite separately. They are two very different businesses. And that's one of the reasons why BP has not been a success for the last 5 years.
Let's talk about what may have prompted this, though, in terms of the increased investment, if you like, in oil and gas. How much can we say this is because of Donald Trump and drill, baby, drill? Or is it the very fact that they've fallen behind over the last couple of years?
Well, I hope it isn't Donald Trump, because that would be a very short-sighted strategic way of running the company. The reality is that the climate doesn't take much notice of US election results, and the issue is still there. I think the reason why they've done this, and I understand it, is that they know how to run an oil and gas business. They haven't found the right way to run the low carbon business. That's why I think they should be separated. And the evidence is their underperformance against their main competitors like Shell over the last 5 years. And I think that should have been acknowledged. I think we should have seen board changes and a real radical strategic review. Rather, this looks like tinkering.
But why not get that right, in the sense that, you know, is this a company that long-term is still thinking actually renewables is still fundamentally part of the future? You know, I was listening to commentary today saying, you know, the fundamentals of climate change haven't changed just because the company's not performed that well, or indeed that Donald Trump is now in the White House?
Absolutely, those fundamentals are still there, as the people in Los Angeles. Climate change is getting worse. The impact is greater all the time. And yes, I think BP as a great company should be looking at today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. And they haven't quite done that. I think this won't stop the speculation about the future of the business, because the assets in BP, the businesses they own, are worth more than the share price suggests. And I think active investors are going to keep looking at this company until it gets it right.
Well, isn't that the point also that, there are concerns that BP is ripe for a takeover?
I think it is. And I think that's why Elliott, which is one of the most sharpest activist investors in the world, have focused on it. I don't think they will take their focus away from it, just as a result of these limited announcements.
And Nick, just very finally, there'll be a lot of, particularly environmentalists, a lot of people concerned about climate change, saying, you know what, this is bad news. This is not what we wanted. It's not just signalling the wrong thing. It's going to make things worse. Though, could you then turn around and say, actually, fundamentally, BP do extract more oil and gas. That was just going to happen anyway, and that actually BP should just take advantage of the opportunity?
I think environmentalists, people concerned about the climate, will be upset, and legitimately so. BP should be doing both. The world needs oil and gas, and it's better that they do it than some of the people in the Middle East supplying us. But I think they should also be sustaining the effort on renewables and low carbon for the future. I think they have to do that in two separate pieces, but I don't think by just cutting the money going to renewables is going to achieve much at all.
OK, Nick, really appreciate your thoughts and analysis this afternoon. Really interesting stuff, and we will see and watch where BP go next and how that reflects on the business in the months to come. Nick, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the UK's climate advisors have warned that the country needs to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. Today, even with that announcement from BP, they're making that argument it needs to happen over the next 15 years to stay on track to hit net zero by 2050. In the latest advice to the government, the Climate Change Committee suggests emissions need to be cut by 87% by 2040. And it says a third of those reductions need to come from household action, which includes installing heat pumps and getting electric cars on the road. Well, our science and technology editor, Ed Clark, has been looking at that report.
Having the heat sucked out of your home, watched by a thermal imaging camera.
I don't think you'd appreciate how much of a draft there is from there. Wow.
Reveals the drafts and cold spots that, multiplied across tens of millions of properties, represent the next front line in tackling climate change. Maria's house in Bristol, like pretty much all the rest in Britain, will need a bit of work before they can ditch their gas boiler for a greener, more efficient heat pump and see it save money in the long run.
I think in terms of, financing it, yeah, there'd need to be some kind of support, because it's, I don't have, spare capital to put into just sort of, funding this outright.
Now, the difference between the top and the bottom of the chart on here is...
It's why the latest report from the Committee on Climate Change is its most consequential yet. Few of us noticed the 50% cut in emissions achieved so far, made by ditching coal for wind and solar power. But cutting the remaining 50% falls largely in and around our homes.
By the late 2030s, heat is important. Warming our homes with zero carbon electricity is the single most important step to getting to net zero. But the electrifying pace will have to increase both in our homes and beyond.
Roughly 1% of all UK homes have a heat pump fitted. By 2040, that figure needs to rise to 52%. Electric cars on the road must go from 2.8% now to 80% by 2040. And industry needs to decarbonise more too. Electricity currently meeting 26% of demand, that should grow to 61%. And all that demand will require 6 times more electricity from offshore wind. But, says the climate watchdog, it will have to get cheaper quickly. Consumers simply won't switch until it makes life better.
It's not asking you to be colder, not to drive, not to take your holiday. It's saying we expect business and government to work to make these better, modern technologies available to you. And also that means that we help the planet.
Their new advice shows how consumers and the wider economy will benefit from the rapid shift away from fossil fuels mandated by law. But it's a cash-strapped government that must work out how to afford the fixes needed to deliver it. Tom Clark, Sky News, Bristol.
Tom Clark then. Let's bring you up to date with some of the rest of the day's stories now. And 170 jobs are to go at the luxury car manufacturer Aston Martin as part of a cost-cutting plan. The company struggled with growing losses and production issues that have seen the launch of its first battery-powered vehicle delayed for the second time. Aston Martin said it is targeting yearly savings of £25 million and expects to hit about half of that total this year. Heathrow Airport is in talks with scores of airlines, including British Airways, about a once-in-a-decade overhaul of its occupancy, which could lead to some being forced to relocate the long-standing bases. Sky News has learned that Heathrow has opened negotiations with the 82 carriers which fly from the airport with a view of implementing operational changes aimed at better using its capacity during the coming years. It comes as the airport recorded a 31% surge in annual profits. Meanwhile, British Airways have been named the worst UK carrier for long-haul flights. A survey satisfaction for which has analysed travellers' experience on more than 9,000 flights, and it found that BA finished joint bottom with Air Canada out of 19 airlines for long-haul flights. It also finished 12th out of 16 for those short-haul flights, with Ryanair finishing bottom. And you can have more on that and indeed the rest of the Money News. All you need to do is scan the QR code on your screen right now to access the Money blog on the Sky News app. OK, I did talk about this a little earlier, that Donald Trump is going to have his first cabinet meeting live from the White House. We can bring you that now as he meets those cabinet members.